All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sober Yoga Girl. This is my first podcast interview I've done in a little while, so I'm really happy to be back here with another guest. And for today's episode, I have with me Gail McDonald. And Gail has been alcohol-free for just over 3 years. And she is from the UK originally. She's now living in Spain, and she is also a sober coach, the creator of Sober Bliss. So I am super happy to have you here. Welcome, Gail. How are you today?
Hi, Alex. Yes, I'm doing very well today. Thank you. It's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you too, finally. Yeah. I love connecting with these people that I've been connected with, on social media or via email, and then finally meeting in real life. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, virtual real life as well. And what I think is so amazing is that obviously I'm here in Spain and you are all the way over there in the United Arab Emirates. It's just so cool that we can connect.
It is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get started. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about yourself, kind of your background, who you are and where you're from and sort of your story.
Yeah, sure. So as you said before, I am from the UK. I'm from the northeast of England, and I live in Spain, in the south of Spain. So I've gone right from the northeast of England all the way down to the south of Spain. I'm in a tiny little village close to Granada, which is in Andalusia. And I've been here since 2004. Before I left for Spain, while I was still living in the UK, I was also a teacher. I know that you were a teacher too. I was a secondary school teacher, languages. And I still continue teaching a little bit, but it's mainly English. So I teach English to foreign students. And I started that a while ago, and I'd kept it up because I really just enjoy this connection like where we've got today. So I have kept that up. But yeah, living here in the south of Spain, it's just so lovely. I've got 2 kids, and that was one of the reasons why we came over here, actually, to kind of give them a better life, because we used to live in quite an industrial part of the UK, a big city. It wasn't great. So we wanted to give them a different way of life. And I think as well, being bilingual was quite important to me, because I taught languages, and it's just such a huge advantage, I think, when a child can speak another language, and when they learn it from babies, which my 2 did, or Josh was 2 anyway, they just absorb it. They're just like little sponges. So that was one of the reasons why we came over here as well.
That's amazing. So wait, so you taught while in the UK, and you're still doing English language teaching, but had you already finished kind of your teaching by the time you were in Spain?
I worked in secondary schools in the UK. I did that for about 4 years.
Okay.
So obviously I handed in my notice, finished my last term at school, and then came over here.
Yeah.
And I started teaching originally English just in the village before I moved online.
Okay. Because I was just curious, talking about being a teacher. I know one of my biggest struggles while being a teacher was I was really anxious about entering the sober sphere and the sober world and my teaching reputation and what parents would think and what my, school community would think. So I was just wondering if there was like any sort of overlap in that, but it sounds like you had kind of finished in the school setting, which makes it a bit easier or a bit different. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's actually really interesting what you say, because surely a school would be thrilled to have a teacher who is alcohol free, as opposed to having one who drinks. Not that, it's something that you would advertise, but yet there's that anxiousness and worry that you just described about, what will people think if I say I'm not drinking anymore? Mm-hmm. And really, I think it should be the opposite. I think we should be celebrated for doing what we're doing, because it is a positive thing. And that's, kind of the angle that I come from in my coaching and the work that I do, because it should be something that we are celebrated for and congratulated for. Yet there's this shame and stigma still lingering there, which I think makes it more difficult to be open, and sometimes more difficult to start the journey in the first place, because if we're worried what people might think of us.
Yeah, 100%. And, I have my sober yoga community, and I know that this fear was like, I had it too for so long. I was actually afraid of even doing a testimonial for the sober program I was part of, because I was afraid of people coming across it and it becoming gossip. And I have quite a few teachers in my sober community, and I see that fear in many of them too. Some are okay with it. I know I have one principal of a school who just like shouts it from the rooftop, telling all her teachers that she's sober, which is amazing. And then I have some who are like very, confidential and private, which of course we like respect. But I see that fear, which it just seems so, as you say, like it should be celebrated. It should be something that you're proud of. And yet there's a little bit of stigma around it.
Yeah, there is, which is such a shame, because as you know, living alcohol free, it's such a great thing to do, and hiding it, feeling ashamed of it, it kind of goes against what living alcohol free, to me anyway, means. But yeah, there is that understandable fear and shame. What would people think?
And the other thing I wanted to mention when you're talking about being in Spain, I traveled to Spain a long time ago now. Actually, it was 5 years ago, back when I was still a party girl. And I didn't have a very good experience there. But I was partying so hard when I was there. Like, I had been living in Kuwait for a year, where alcohol was completely illegal. All of a sudden arrive in Spain, and I just was drinking so much that I got myself into some pretty negative situations. And anyway, so I keep saying to myself, I did not travel to the south of Spain. I did a little bit of a North Spain. I went to little small villages, which I can't remember the name of. And I started in Barcelona and I ended in Madrid. But I keep saying to myself, I need to go back and redo this trip sober, because I went to Paris a few years later. It was my first vacation sober. And I was really afraid of going, because I had this whole concept in my mind about Europe being a place where you drink wine. And I was like, what am I going to do in Europe without wine? And my trip to Paris was like incredible. It was like one of the best vacations of my life. So I keep saying I need to go do Spain sober, so that I can like redo the whole thing and do it with kind of like a positive memory. And so if I come, I'll let you know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Spain is kind of the land of sangria and fiesta and beer and tapas. Is that whole bar kind of culture, isn't there? And that was probably my downfall, really, which we can get into in a minute. But yeah, if you come back and do it sober, you'll notice such a difference. You really will.
Yeah. And even in just like, because I was so hungover, like we all know the anxiety and the mood swings and like all of the impacts of alcohol, but I wasn't able to cope with the negative things that had happened to me. I got pickpocketed one night, and then another night I just ended up I got into a car that wasn't a taxi, basically. And it was a really scary experience for me. And I ended up jumping out of the car because they wouldn't stop the car. It was very scary. And I just, in reality, these things happen everywhere. And I've learned over time, but had I been sober, I'm sure, like, first of all, I wouldn't be out at 3 a.m. by myself getting into cars, but I also would probably be able to process it in a way that I probably wouldn't be feeling so low, And so anyway, I'm sure I would have a different experience if I came back.
Yeah, you would.
All right. So let's jump into, I want to hear about your drinking career. So how did you start drinking? What kind of influenced your drinking habits along the way?
Yeah, I was probably a late starter, if you like. I wasn't a rebellious teenager or anything like that. I didn't really drink through high school or university that much. It was kind of when I got my own home. I first bought my house in my early 20s, and it was just the adult thing to do, to have a wine rack in the kitchen and all of that. And obviously I used to come back from school, from teaching, and I would have a glass of wine to unwind from the day and do the marking and the planning for the next day. And it stayed like that for quite a while. You know, it was moderate, it was sensible. And when I got pregnant with my first son, obviously I had probably a year, 18 months off when I was pregnant and breastfeeding and everything. And then went back to work, and it slowly crept back in again of an evening, a bit more on a weekend. But still, you know, it wasn't anything to be worried about as such. And when we came to Spain, I suppose that's when it kind of started to ramp up, really. We spent our first few months in Spain living in a caravan. We bought a cave house, which needed renovation. So, and we would do a lot of the work ourselves. So at the end of the working day, we would have a few cold beers in the evening. And as we said before, Spain's a very social bar kind of culture. So we would go out to meet the locals and practice our Spanish. I don't know how good it was after a few beers, but, you know, we thought it gave us confidence, and we thought we were fluent after a few drinks. And then it just kind of went from there, really. And then I got pregnant again, had some more time off. And probably when my youngest son, he's 11 now, so when he was about maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5, it really ramped up. Because, as I said, we lived in a cave. Where we lived was quite isolated. It's very extreme where I live, so really cold winters, so there wasn't a lot to do. And I suppose I just felt lonely in a way. And I had these 2 kids to deal with, and it became my way of coping, my way of escaping, my me time, my grown-up time. And it just gradually crept up. It went from being, you know, a couple of beers in the evening to I would have a beer at 2:30 when we got the kids back from school. And that was kind of a split in the day, I suppose. I would go from the morning doing a bit of work to the afternoon shift, as I like to say, where I would just drink basically all afternoon. Sometimes I would have to have a little siesta because I had too much, and then I would wake up and just do it all again. So while it happened gradually, all of a sudden I found myself in the position where I was just drinking daily, and I was a home drinker. If we ever went out, then I would be careful. I wouldn't really drink that much because I wanted to get home safely, if you like. But where I was at home, I was safe. I knew if anything happened, then someone would put me to bed, or, you know, I didn't have to get home. So my drinking was very firmly rooted at home. And my husband drank, you know, the friends that we had all drank. Some of them didn't have kids, so there was, you know, quite a few late nights, and it got pretty much out of control, basically, towards the end, even with 2 kids at home. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah. And that's often how I think most people have a similar experience, in that, like, no one starts out drinking planning to drink every night. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of, it escalates, like it just builds. And all of a sudden you end up looking back and you're like, wow, I don't know how it sort of got to this point.
Yeah, it just kind of creeps up on you, doesn't it? And that's the nature of alcohol, I suppose. It's addictive, and you do, kind of develop a tolerance to it. So obviously you need more to get the same effect, and then you develop a dependence on it. For me, I wasn't physically dependent on alcohol, and I did drink mainly beers, wine occasionally, but I couldn't really cope with wine. It used to send me off and do stupid things. We weren't necessarily spirit drinkers either, but even so, I did develop that strong emotional dependence on the beers and the wine from time to time. You know, I felt like I couldn't do anything unless I had a beer in my hand, and I would walk around the house often with a beer in my hand all day.
And so tell me about, like, what was the moment that made you decide to quit?
Okay. Well, I had a previous experience, apart from my 2 pregnancies, where I stopped for 6 months. And I think it must have been some spontaneous sobriety or something, because I was stood in the bar. We had a bar in our cave. And I was stood in there, and I had some sherry. And I hate sherry, but that's all we had. I think it was mid-January. So I wasn't doing dry January or anything. I was drinking this sherry, and I was like, oh, I don't really want this. And that was it for 6 months. It didn't bother me. I didn't think about it. It was just, no alcohol. And it felt amazing. And then something happened. I can't remember what it was. And gradually I went back. But always in the back of my mind, I had that experience. I remembered what it was like to not drink and to feel good. And I always wanted to get back to that place. And I didn't really know how, and I kept trying, nothing was really working, and then something really awful happened. But unfortunately, I didn't stop after that moment. Such was the shame and the guilt around what I'd done. And it took a few months after that for me to stop drinking. And how it happened was my husband actually said, oh, this is getting out of control. I think we're drinking too much. The atmosphere at home wasn't great, because when we were both drinking, it would just end up in arguments, and it wasn't a nice home atmosphere. And he'd obviously been feeling that way too. So he said, okay, I'm not drinking tomorrow. I was like, okay. And there was still some beers left in the fridge. So I obviously had to finish those beers. I couldn't leave them in there. So the day after that, I woke up and I was like, well, if he's not drinking, then I can't really drink. And part of me was like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Why are you saying it now? I'm not prepared. And the other half of me was like, oh, thank you. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I needed. And it just went from there, basically. So it was kind of not forced on me, but the fact that he'd made that decision, it made sense for me to make the same choice. So yeah, it just carried on from there.
And you've been alcohol free ever since. That was that. Wow.
Yeah.
So you sound like me. I feel like there's like 2 types of people. There's people that, have to slowly kind of wean off of it and sort of go back and forth. And then there's people like I was the same way. I just ripped the Band-Aid off. It was like, okay, that's it. I'm sober, and I was just so, I don't know. And I think that might be more reflective. I don't know if you would relate to this, but for myself, it was very much like I had wanted to be alcohol free for a long time, but it's like I'm very stubborn. And when I say I'm doing something, then I'm doing it. And so it's like I would never say I'm going to quit until I knew I was going to quit. And so that might have been part of it. But as soon as it's like, I'm going to quit, it was like, there's no looking back.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, while it can be quite scary thinking of it like that, it's easier than trying to moderate or wean yourself off or cut down, simply because of the nature of alcohol. It's addictive. Obviously, the more you have, the more you want. And I find, because I tried obviously to moderate and all the rest of it, but it's like, okay, well, I'll just drink on Saturday and Sunday, and that might work for a while. But then Saturday becomes Friday, and then Friday becomes Thursday, and all of these little rules that you make up for yourself, they just go out the window. And people I work with, people I've talked to, all have the same experience. And I think it's the addictive part of our brain. It's like, yes, this is a good idea. Just do it slowly. It'll be fine. You can moderate. But really, I think if you want to get the full benefits of alcohol-free living, however long you want to do that for, you have to go all in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you won't experience it fully, I don't think. And it's kind of like rewarding yourself with the very thing that you're trying not to have, which is a contradiction, I think. Well, it totally is. Yeah. And it makes it more, kind of puts alcohol there on a pedestal, if you like. When really, I don't think it deserves the credit that we give it. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Just rip the Band-Aid off and jump in with both feet, because it is so much easier than trying to moderate.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something there about, I can't remember what you just said, but it reminded me of something one of my leaders in Sober Curious Yoga School, Lee, she said this yesterday in one of our sessions, that from control, you get freedom. I think you said you're rewarding yourself with the thing that you're trying to stop yourself. That's what you said. And that reminded me of what Lee said, which is like, are controlling yourself, but from that control is where you get the freedom. And it's so true. Like, you think that you're taking something away, but you're actually bringing so much, joy and peace to your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me about the process getting sober. What was difficult about it? What was easy about it? What was it like for you?
To be honest, at first it was quite boring. I have to say that. I literally spent 2 months on the sofa, eating cake, drinking tea, and watching the television because I didn't know what else to do. And I think I needed that time just to sit and get used to not drinking in my environment.
Yeah.
The thing that really helped was, I suppose, my mindset, because I'd made the decision that I wasn't going to drink no matter what. And that really helped, because then it was like, okay, well, I'm not drinking no matter what. So whatever happens, however I'm feeling, I am not going to drink. And then it was sort of, so what am I going to do instead? And that was a challenge. Making that decision and telling myself that I just wasn't going to drink was really freeing, actually. And as soon as I made that decision, and I often quote Michael Jordan here, and he says, once I made a decision, I never thought about it again. Mm-hmm. And it was like that for me with drinking. I made the decision, and honestly, the thought of drinking never entered my head again. I just knew I wasn't going to do it. And that in itself was just such a great feeling, because that internal chatter had gone. The wine witch and all of that was just gone, because it wasn't an option anymore. But then obviously the challenging bit was, well, what am I going to do instead? All the usual associations, like Friday night, the weekend. Oh, it's hot, it's cold, it's raining, it's sunny. I'm going out and staying in. All of that. I had to figure out what I was going to do instead. And in the beginning, I didn't really know what to do. So that's why I just sat on the sofa, basically. We had 2 dogs at the time. We've only got 1 now, but I used to walk them quite a lot. And that was really helpful in getting out of the house, especially if I was struggling or if I was having a craving. then I would just walk the dogs and get out the house. And I would always feel much better when I came in. So it started slowly, and it was, pretty boring, I have to admit. But that's fine, that's what I needed, and that's what I did.
And you know what? I think that boredom is, a lot of people probably go through that because for a long time, our identity becomes wrapped up in being, the drinker or the partier or whatever. And I know that I lost myself. Like, I didn't know what I enjoyed anymore. I had forgotten, the things that as a young teenager you do on the, like I think about my years at summer camp. I did crafts, I did painting, I played guitar, I sang. And when you first become sober, you've like forgotten all of that. Yeah. And then it takes a little while to relearn like what is actually joyful that's not with a drink in my hand. And you feel like there's nothing to do, but in reality, there is like so much more to do, and you just need to like find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think as well that you do need that time of just maybe quiet reflection and sitting with the boredom, sitting with the feelings. I know it's uncomfortable, but we're so used to numbing out or to getting a drink to help us feel differently. So when that's no longer an option, obviously all the feelings and the emotions come up. I think that is what helps us to, do what you said, to figure out what it is that I actually enjoy doing now when alcohol is not the main focus of the evening or the weekend or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you do now in your free time that you used to be drinking?
I walk a lot. I still spend a lot of time outdoors. I'm really lucky that from, my front door, I can be in the woods in 2 minutes. And Spain, obviously, it doesn't rain that much. Problem is right now, it's just so hot. So you've got to do all those kind of things in the mornings. Right. But definitely walking. We have a 4x4. So we go like overlanding, we go out in the countryside, and we do a lot of outdoor activities that way. I kind of got back into cooking again, obviously spending time with my kids, even just sitting with them and talking to them and walking and, not necessarily doing anything, but just being there and really being there, not being there in body, but elsewhere in mind. So that was really nice. Reading. Gosh, I've read so many books since I stopped drinking. And it's so nice to be able to see the words on the page and remember what it is that you've read as well. I did do a little bit of yoga, but I kind of fell off the yoga wagon. So maybe we could have a chat about how to get back on that. Just doing things that I like to do. And then obviously, I think it was about 8 months in, I started Sober Bliss. It just started off as a blog to begin with, where I would just, it really helped me to write out kind of what I was experiencing and the benefits and all of that. But, I've got 2 kids, I've got my own business, and so I'm quite busy. And when I think back, I'm quite surprised at how I managed to do anything, really, drinking or recovering from drinking, because half the things that I do now, I just couldn't imagine doing them either drunk or hungover. So I'm quite surprised that I managed to do anything at all. And I didn't do much at all.
Yeah, no, I look back on some of the things that I did hungover and I'm just like, how? Like I used to teach hot yoga hungover.
Wow.
And I look back and I'm like, that is the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
so much better being sober, like so
It
much
is.
better to just have your morning to do what you want to do. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you kind of jumped into, you started talking about Sober Bliss, started off as a blog. Tell me about that. How did you end up in sober coaching? Like, what was the journey to get there?
Yeah. Well, obviously, from the benefits that I was experiencing myself, I felt like I'd been let into the biggest secret in the world, and I couldn't understand why nobody else wanted to join in this amazing life. And I wanted to share it with people. And obviously, my own experience is, great motivation and a great source of support in itself. But I wanted to do something a bit more formal. Obviously, I'm a teacher already, so that really helped. So I did some addiction therapy training. I trained to be an addiction therapist.
Yeah.
So I could understand a bit more about the nature of addiction, the nature of alcohol, and use that along with my own experiences, obviously my teacher qualifications as well, to just combine it all into one resource, I suppose. I wanted to make myself a resource for people and to share what worked for me and share my own experiences and just get the message out there that, yes, it's scary, it's difficult, but it's also the best thing that you can do for yourself and to help people achieve that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so amazing. And I agree with you on like having the teacher background really adds to it. Because you, I don't know, for me, it helps me in like leading and facilitating and like sort of planning what kind of content I'll be sharing.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so do you work one-on-one with people? Do you do group programs? Like how is what you offer set up?
There's various different ways that I help people. Obviously, my podcast is free. The blogs posts are free. People can access that. I do one-to-one coaching as well. We normally work together for between 3 and 6 months. And I have a structured program for the first 3 months, definitely. Zoom calls, we have WhatsApp group. So it's very personalized, very intimate, and a huge amount of accountability, because I think that's what's important in the beginning, especially if you're kind of alone in your immediate kind of family and circle of friends. It's important to have somebody who you can turn to. So the one-to-one is very, dedicated and very supportive. I also do a membership. We have a really lovely, supportive membership site. Well, I say site, it's more like support in terms of Zoom meetings. We get together 3 or 4 times a week. Again, we have a WhatsApp group. So when people come to membership, they know that no matter where they are in their journey, whether they are drinking or not, it's a mix of people, that there's always somebody there, whether that's me personally on Zoom or if they can reach out in the WhatsApp group. And I think that connection and support is key. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of materials, if you like, in the membership. We do something new every month, but the main focus is on connection and talking and accountability, because I do think that is key. It was for me, because obviously at home I had my husband who wasn't drinking, but not everybody has that. So the membership is a place where people can go to that for that support as well. And then I have some ebooks as well, which people can use to either get started on their journey or, reaffirm why they're doing what they're doing, and they're kind of standalone, work at your own pace type resources. But they go into a lot more detail than the blogs and the podcast. So there's a mix, there's something there for everybody, because everybody's different. We all need different resources, and we all have different ways of approaching this journey. So hopefully, yeah, there's something there for everybody. But I have to say, I do love both the membership and the one-to-ones.
Yeah.
And I think that from my background as a teacher, and I like the connection. I just love watching people go through that process.
Yeah.
You know, they come to us in a often quite a fragile state. There's a lot of fear and doubt and guilt, and it, you know, and then to watch them move through the process and come out the other side a completely different person is just so lovely. And they're often surprised at just how much they can grow and flourish in 3 months or 6 months or a year. And I really like that part of my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And, you know, hearing you talk about your program, it sounds very similar to what I offer, in that I agree with you that one of the most important thing is like connection, community, support, and just knowing that you're not like walking on this path alone. And so I originally quit alcohol with 1 year no beer, which was fantastic. It was great, but there just wasn't a live component. It was like all just a Facebook group, which is amazing. But I really, really wish that I had people to talk to. And so I completely agree with you. Like that is one of the most important things, is just that there's other people there who get it.
Yeah. And it's surprising because we think we're alone.
Yeah.
But really we're not. We were just talking about that in the membership yesterday. And it's just so nice, as you say, to have people there who get you and who won't judge you either. And if you say a certain thing, they're like, yeah, I know what that feels like. That happened to me too. And just to know that you're not alone is really helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. So I have one last question for you. Well, two actually. First I'll ask you is, if my listeners are interested in connecting with you, where can they find you online?
Okay, so I have a website, which is soberbliss.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Again, just Sober Bliss. So if you search for that, then I'm sure I will pop up. And yeah, you send me an email, a message, anything.
Amazing. And then my next question is, or the last one, what advice would you give to someone who is looking to quit drinking?
Okay, yeah. I would first of all look within, because it's quite easy to compare yourself to other people and look around and, you know, oh, well, they're not too bad. That must mean I'm okay. But if your drinking is making you unhappy, then really explore that and really listen to yourself and what you need. And the other thing I would say is focus on what you could gain from living alcohol free, however long, you know, you want to do it for. Focus on the benefits, focus on what you want to do, how you want to feel, what you want to achieve. Because coming at it from a place of openness and joy and curiosity and positivity is a much nicer way to approach this whole journey, I think. You know, there's enough shame and guilt and worry anyway. Yeah. So why not switch it up? Why not look forward to what you want to do, and most importantly, how you want to feel? I think that is key. It certainly was for me. And explore just how great you're going to feel when you're not drinking alcohol anymore. Really focus on that is why you want to do it. And be open, you know, go all in, like we said, rip off the Band-Aid. Don't think about it too much. I think for me, certainly, I wasted so much time thinking about it, because then I would just talk myself out of it. Whereas actually taking the step and making a start wasn't half as scary as I thought it would be. So I think you have to maybe get out of your own way a little bit and just try, just give it a go and see what happens. You know, there's no shame in trying. There's no shame in seeing what works for you, what doesn't work for you, but always try and focus on the positives of what you're doing. You know, that will carry you through. Find something to hold on to. For me, it was the mornings. If I had a wobble, then I would just think of the mornings. Just think of how great I'm going to feel when I wake up tomorrow. I haven't had a drink. And I'll just be so proud, and I'll have a wonderful morning. And that's what carried me through in the beginning. So find something that you can really connect to emotionally that will carry you through. And just, give it a go. Jump in with both feet and get support as well. Don't do it on your own. If you're struggling, reach out to somebody. There will be somebody who you resonate with, somebody who you feel you can talk to. So find that person or that group or whatever it might be, and just go for it. There's absolutely nothing to lose and so much to gain.
Awesome. That is such a great note to end it on. Gail, thank you so much for taking your time, sharing your story, and sharing with our audience. I really, really appreciate you being on the show today. And it was super nice to finally meet. And I'm going to put the links to your details in the podcast episode so that our listeners can connect with you as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex.
All right.
It's been so nice.
It's been so awesome, Gail. So I'll hopefully speak to you soon, maybe see you in yoga soon.
Yay, you will, I'm sure.
All right. Take care, Gail. Bye.
Bye. Bye.